Welcome back to the darkest and scariest Thomas adaptations. This is entry number 10 today, and we're looking at a story written and narrated by Narrowgauge and adapted by Casper B12. We have multiple voice actors, been a while since we've had that, so let's just get right into it.
Donald and Douglas are a pair of Caledonian goods engines that work on the Scottish region of British Railways. They are kept busy and work hard together, often double-heading trains. Although they were friendly, the other engines were wise to not get on their bad sides, as they would give rather horrific threats if anyone did. Whether they meant these threats or not has yet to be determined.
We open up with Narrowgauge's narration, describing the sheer ferocity of the Scottish twins sometimes, and how you'd never want to get on their bad side. Despite them being friendly, if you get on their bad side, they're definitely a force of nature you don't want to fuck with. And the twins here are voiced by Victor Tanzig.
Since the early 50s, diesel locomotives became more common on BR. At first, no one thought much of it. However, over time, they soon realised that diesels weren't just here to improve the railways, they were here to replace. One of these was a Class 42 warship that came from a factory in Barrow. He was simply referred to as Diesel 5 and was allocated to the same shed Donald and Douglas resided in.
I see this place has yet to be rid of oversized kettles,
he said disapprovingly.
I hope that's not the only attitude you have,
snapped Donald.
If it is, you won't last long here.
Are you threatening me, 57646?
Don't you dare call him by his number,
interrupted Douglas.
He has a name, just like any proper engine. Unlike you.
Don't talk to me like that. I'm the future of the railway, and you and your kind are dying out. Show me some respect.
We only give respect to those who give it back, and you have shown no such thing since arriving.
Before the engines could exchange any more insults, Diesel 5 was called to pull a goods train and left. The twins were furious.
Who does that shoebox on wheels think he is? What should we do?
Pondered Douglas.
I'm not sure. He's only given words so far, but if he does something to us or anyone else, then we'll think of something.
We're then introduced to the idea that dieselization is taken over. We meet our main antagonist called Diesel 5, who is voiced brilliantly by NWR 58. It's because of this conflict that the twins now have something else to be pissed off at. And it's clear that they want to do something about it, but at the same time they can't. Until Diesel 5 proves himself to be a force to be reckoned with and a threat to them in general, then maybe they'll do something. Until then, he's just a big bully.
And there have been no more confrontations between Diesel 5 and the twins. Unfortunately, this wouldn't be the case for long. Douglas was on a quay at a harbour. He had just delivered some trucks filled with stone, and they were currently being unloaded. Soon they had finished, and Douglas prepared to reverse out of the quay. Suddenly, he felt a bump from behind and began rolling towards the edge. His driver slammed on the brakes and Douglas screeched to a halt just as his first pair of driving wheels left the rails.
Help! Someone help!
Luckily, Donald, who was nearby, came to his aid, and after being coupled up, pulled Douglas to safety.
Oh, thank you, Donald. Thank you. What happened, Dougie? Did your brakes fail? No. Someone pushed me from behind, but I don't know who did it.
Unbeknownst to them, Diesel 5 was watching them, cursing under his breath.
Damn, I was so close to getting rid of him.
Later, the twins were resting on a siding, still shaken over what happened. Douglas decided to take his mind off it by surveying his surroundings. He noticed a little tank engine sleeping in an open shed. All of a sudden, it was bumped from behind and began rolling down the line towards a quay. Both twins were shocked, and as Douglas watched on, unable to move in time, Donald looked back at the shed. There, standing at the back, was Diesel 5, smirking. Before anyone could say anything, the tank engine rolled towards the edge of the quay.
Alright, hold up. Is that seriously the scream sound effect that I just heard? We just watched a sentient locomotive get murdered, and that's the scream sound effect you use. That's a meme scream.
Towards the edge of the quay, towards the edge of the quay, towards the edge of the quay.
Almost as famous as the Wilhelm scream. I would have either recorded a terrified scream myself or something similar, but more disturbing sounding. This thing is such a well-known sound effect that it's lost all either frightening or terrifying value towards it. And considering the serious nature of what just took place here, I found it made it kind of funny. It made it kind of funny. It took whatever seriousness that was within this scene completely out of it because of this scream sound effect. It's amazing how one sound effect can ruin a serious tone because of how stupid it sounds. Oh God. No, just no. Moving on from that small little rant, I guess. Donald and Douglas witnessed Diesel 5 murdered a small tank engine, and they decide to finally do something. Later that night.
That evening, Diesel 5 was in a goods yard, preparing to leave. He had just delivered a train there, and was currently filling up on fuel. When he finished, his driver entered the cab, and they were on their way. Neither of them noticed a certain pair of engines on a siding, watching them. "It's a shame you weren't able to get rid of that Tinder engine," Diesel 5's driver said.
Indeed. I'm sure I'll have another chance.
He was interrupted by a spluttering sound from his engine, and before long, he came to a complete stop.
What happened?
"I don't know," replied the driver. "You're not working anymore." The driver got out and inspected Diesel 5, but there was nothing wrong. "Well, we must have taken bad fuel. I'll have to run back and phone for help." The driver then proceeded to jog up the line, back to the yard, where he would find the nearest signal box. Diesel 5 was all alone, but not for long. He began to hear the puffing of a steam engine from behind.
I was hoping for a diesel to help me, but you're better than nothing. Ow!
He cried as he was bumped from behind.
Do you mind?
Quiet, you!
Came a stern voice.
Diesel 5 breaks down on the line. His driver can't do anything, so he walks up the line to search for help. As Diesel 5 is alone, he suddenly feels a buff from behind him and hears the sound of two steam engines. It's Donald and Douglas, and as they buffer up to him, they start taking him down an old rusty rail line.
He came to an old wooden bridge. Diesel 5 thought nothing of it at first, until he noticed something. There was a large gap between both ends of the bridge, meaning it had collapsed.
Can you two stop? The bridge is out.
The twins said nothing and kept moving. Diesel 5 was now desperate.
Are you deaf? I said the bridge is out!
Despite the Diesel's wailing, they moved closer to the edge. Then, as Diesel 5's first set of wheels left the rails, they came to a halt. Diesel 5 began to teeter.
What? What are you doing?
Tell me, Buzzbox, how does it feel teetering over the edge?
Donald questioned.
How does it feel knowing you could fall?
What do you think it feels? It's bloody terrifying! Now pull me back!
Now you know how I felt when you tried to push me off the quay. Not to mention that tank engine you sent flying into the bloody sea.
How did you know?
Did you think no one would notice the way you reacted to that engine's death?
Donald answered.
You might have hidden from the workers and manager, but you didn't hide from us. So we decided to make sure you can't harm anyone else. Of course, we had to get you to a standstill,
added Douglas.
So we contaminated the fuel in that goods yard with our water. Considering the length of the journey home, we knew you couldn't get back without taking some more.
This was all planned? Please, I swear it was an accident. I never meant for that engine to fall in the ocean. I thought his brakes were...
Don't give me that rubbish!
bellowed Douglas.
As Donald said, we saw your reaction. That big grin on your face when the engine was announced dead. Your intentions were clear, and you achieved them.
And you claim you're doing better? If I fall, the blood will be on your buffers. You're attempting murder! Murder!
Then, Diesel 5 heard the cracking of wood beneath him. He soon realised that this bridge wasn't designed for engines his weight. Donald and Douglas wisely moved back onto land.
Murder, you say? Well, how is it murder if the victim in question committed murder himself? Aye. You see, Diesel 5, this isn't murder. This is punishment!
This is such a cold-blooded killing from the twins to Diesel 5. At the same time, it's cold vengeance. And you can't really feel sorry for Diesel 5 here. And by the way, that scream NWR 58 gives is amazing. We learned that that little tank engine was the 5th victim of Diesel 5's wrath. Now you really have no sympathy for him. No one ever finds out about what the twins did. And Diesel 5's driver is arrested for the killings of the other engines. Diesel 5 is forgotten about. And our story concludes on a warning to never get on the twins' bad side. This is definitely an awesome story about cold vengeance, and it's a story of genius by narrow gauge. However, the execution here needs some work, so how does this rank? The cinematography here is great, albeit a bit too bright. Like, the brightness can seriously be toned down a bit in the editing phase. We should be able to see the textures instead of just solid color. So fixing the exposure, contrast, and temperature can do that. The night sequences, though, are great and more detailed than the day ones because of the lack of brightness in the frame. I'm giving this an 8 here. When it comes to Narrow Gauge's writing, I'm very fond of it. His narration here, though, is very bland. There's not a lot of emotion put into it. He's just kind of like reading the script out loud.
To the deep, cold sea. None of the cranes were long enough to pull the little tank engine from the water.
It just needs a little bit more emotion. For everything chaotic going on in this story, it needs to have some more grandiose, dramatic flair to it. It's a 9 here. The voice acting is a 10 here. Victor Tanzig nails those Scottish accents, and NWR 58's emotional and menacing delivery for Diesel 5 is amazing. For everything this villain does throughout the entire adaptation, you truly feel the anger, malevolence, and sorrow in the twins.
Aye. You see, Diesel 5, this isn't murder. This is punishment!
As well as that arrogant, selfish, and brutal tone of Diesel 5. Is 100% worthy of this 10.
Me like that. I'm the future of the railway, and you and your kind are dying out. Show me some respect.
The characters of the twins are built up big time and show a darker, more serious side to them that no one would want to fuck with. The new character of Diesel 5 is a perfect antagonist and fits the bill perfectly with it. The sound effects could use some work though. Just like I pointed out in the middle of my review, when we see this little tank engine get killed, it should be sadder sounding, and I would have picked a more guttural and terrified scream instead of that, well, you know.
Towards the edge of the keep and plunge into the deep.
That just took the dark theme from the story away from it when you hear something silly like that. It's a 9 for this. The music that we get throughout, I want to say 90% of this adaptation, is this melancholic and repetitive piano track.
Pair of Caledonian goods engines that work on the Scottish region of British Railways. They are kept busy and work hard together.
But at some points it fits amazingly, and at some points you just kind of get tired of it. Like, there needs to be some more suspense pieces put it in to emphasize the dread and drama of it. It's only until we get the third act where Diesel 5 finally gets his comeuppance that we get this grandiose choir, organ, and like brass sounding dramatic flair of music to it.
soon realised that this bridge wasn't designed for engines his weight. Donald and Douglas wisely moved back onto land.
But throughout it all, it's mainly this repetitive piano track, so I'm giving this a 9 here also. And the final score is a 45 out of 50, making the 5th tiebreaker here, which means it's tied up with Victor Tanzig's Ghost. Thank you all for watching, regardless of my opinions. I'm just being fair in my criticisms. I'm calling out the way I see it from a cinematic and a graphical perspective. I think it's still a great adaptation and definitely something I'll watch over and over again, but I have to be real and honest with criticism. I can never play favorites here. This is the 5th tiebreaker. We have 3 more adaptations to go before the finale. Thank you guys for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.